Attention bowlers, we are going to get started. Welcome back to Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire for another exciting and thrilling Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour match. I'm Steve Kelly on the call. This is Casey McCoole versus Nick Soucy. For 5 strings of Candlepin bowling, the match format is 5 strings and 14 points up for grabs. 2 points per string, 4 for total pinfall with ties, splitting points. Good as always to have you along with us. This match was originally live streamed on Friday, January 10th, 2025, and is available for you watching anytime upon the conclusion of this match. For those interested, I'd like to highlight a few things. First, this broadcast should have subtitles and live captioning enabled, so if you enjoy this feature, please feel free to enable it in the controls below. If you're watching this broadcast on YouTube, the transcript feature will also likely be available. And that's Casey McCoole with an opening ball to the right of the head pin. Half Worcester plus a friend. Casey McCoole with a follow-up shot, and it's just a little bit not complete enough to take the 7 and the 10 on the decks of lane 31 at Leda Lanes, and he'll open with a 9 box, 9 after 1 for Mr. McCoole. Folks, throughout the match, I'll be describing the play-by-play action and providing up-to-the-minute scoring to the best of my ability. Keep your eyes on the unofficial scoreboard. It's there for the benefit of the broadcast while the bowlers maintain their official records separately. Scores may be subject to review or correction, as always. And that's a 5-drop for Casey McCoole to the right of the head pin. 4 horsemen left side and the 10. McCoole fires on the head pin. A little bit light, bit of a thin hit, but he leaves the 7 and the 10 with the wood around the 7. Casey McCoole. He fires to the left. That's another 9 box for Casey McCoole, 2 in a row. 18 after 2 for our Mr. Casey McCoole. Talking about Casey McCoole this season, he has a season record of 57 and 69 after 9 matches played. That's a .83 win-loss ratio. At home, he's 39 and 17 with 4 matches played. Away, he's 18 and 52 with 5 matches played. Season average of 96.55, home average 97.3, away average 95.8. Casey McCoole's off to the right of the head pin. Takes a right side candlepin corner. And the second ball is on the 3-pin, kicks to the left, takes a few more out. See what he can do for a 10 box in the 3rd ball. Casey McCoole. And it looks like it's going to be a 5 box with a couple of sleeper pins behind the 1 and the 2. Casey McCoole is at 23 after 3. Mr. Indiana Jones McCoole has a high single of 123 and a high series of 536, and that's a punch through the center and to split the 4-pin spread eagle, the traditional academic spread eagle, which you punch out the 1, the 5, the 8, and the 9. Casey McCoole on the remedial ball, he picks the left half of the bird, leaves the right half for a 10-box opportunity with a guaranteed 7 box. And McCoole will just miss off to the left. He'll take a 7 box for 30 after 4. Casey McCoole has 8 strikes, 73 spares, and 84 tens this season. He has a perfect box percentage of 47. He has 4,340 seasonal total pins. He is currently 4th place in his division. He is 10th place in the overall wild card. And Casey McCoole is just off to the right with a gutter on the 10. He's going to reset. As that ball went into the gutter, popped out and took a pin. In the rulebook, if you foul, you have the ability to reset the lane after the first ball. That guarantees your ability to get a spare on the 2nd ball if you take all 10 pins. And McCoole fires. He's to the left of the head pin on the 2nd ball this time around, dropping 7. The 1, the 3, and the 7 are on the deck. This is for the 5th box. The 3rd ball to conclude. And it's going to be a 7 for Mr. Casey McCoole. And that's going to put Casey McCoole, our away bowler today, starting out at 37 after 5. With no marks, 1 headpin shot and 1 split in this half. That's the story for Casey McCoole in the first half of this first game in this 5-game series here on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour Class D North in Round 11, Casey McCoole versus Nick Soucy. And now we say hello for the first time today on lane 31 to Nick Soucy. And Nick Soucy fires. He's direct on the head pin, and he's got a spread eagle as well. He's got a 3-pin spread eagle. He's got a talon behind the 2. 7, 8, 10 in the back row. 4, 6, 2, 3. And he fires on the 6 and the 10, leaves everything else on the deck. Nick Soucy's got some work to do here in the third ball to get out of 5-box territory. And he'll sail through the center. That will be a 5-box opener for Nick Soucy. Unfortunate first ball on the split. Talking about Nick Soucy has a season record of 98 and 42 with 10 matches played. That's a 2.33 win-loss ratio. At home, he's 51 and 19 with 5 matches played. That's a 2.68 win-loss ratio. When he's away, he's 47 and 23 with 5 matches played at a 2.04 win-loss ratio. That's Nick Soucy just off to the right with a 3-pin half Worcester plus a friend, the 1, the 2, the 4, the 7, the 8, the 6, and the 10. And Soucy fires for the remedial second ball, and he takes all but the 2 and the 4. It was a good bid. He was on the object pin, shooting for an 8, 9, or 10 box. And he'll take a 10 for 15 after 2 for Mr. Nick Soucy, who has a season average of 101.6. It's his first season in the ACSTs in Class D North Division 3. He has a home average of 100.6 and a away average of 102.6. A high single of 140, a high series 576. And that's Nick Soucy down there, who fires to the right. 1, 5, 2, 4, 7, 8 down on the deck. Soucy fires for the spare, and that's a spare. And the first mark of the game goes to Nick Soucy in the third for 25 and a ball after 3. Nick Soucy is on the board. Soucy working on a spare. He's off to the right of the head pin. It's going to be a 4 fill. Soucy fires for the spare, and he's on the 4 pin and leaves everything else. No mark, no second mark in a row for Nick Soucy. To conclude the 4th box, he's at 29 after 3 so far, and he's just a little bit off the head pin for an 8 box. That puts him at 37 after 4. Compare that to Casey McCool's 30 after 4. Nick Soucy has 25 strikes, 86 spares, and 96 tens in his rookie season so far here on the ACST. He has a perfect box percentage of 55%, 5,078 seasonal total pins, and that's Nick Soucy not on the head pin, but with a generous mix of 8 drops, all but the 1 and the 2, with a piece of wood rolling away from the 2 pin. See if Nick Soucy can spare it up on lane 31. He's just off to the right. Second ball was much like the first, connected in the same spot. So for a 10 box now. Soucy on the 2, kicks some wood, but only takes 1 of 2, and that puts him at 46 after 5. So Nick Soucy had an early lead of 9, 46 to Casey McCool's 37 at the end of the top of the first of 5. Only 1 mark so far for Nick Soucy. Only 1 head pin shot apiece and 1 split apiece. So relatively even ground for both of our bowlers so far. But now we'll say hello to Casey McCoole. Casey McCoole on the right in the navy blue shirt. Bit of a medium hit on the head pin. He drops 6. And McCoole for the spare shot. And he mixes some pins down, but the 5 pin remains on the deck. Piece of wood perpendicular to the 5 on the lane 32, the rightmost lane of our 2-lane pair today at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. That's a 10 box for Casey McCoole, 47 after 6. He's 2 for 6 on the head pin today and has 2 of those head pin shots also being splits. And McCoole on the head pin, a nice thick drop, leaving taking all but the 4. 3 for 7 on the head pin so far, and the second ball just doesn't tail enough to take the 4. And McCoole will take a 9. Still hunting for a mark. He's at 56 after 7 so far. And McCoole pins are still mixing down there on the lanes, but it's going to be a 7 drop. Wasn't on the head pin. But let's see what happens. He's on the 1-2-7. McCoole fires on the 1-2-7, and he's just a little bit off. And the third ball will result in the head pin standing on the deck for a 9 box for 65 and 8. For Casey McCoole. Casey McCoole, who has the 27th high class average at 96.55. In his past 5 matches, he's taken 27 points, averaging 5.4 per match. Casey McCoole's opening pitch of the 9th frame. It's a split. The bucket of 5 and the 7. And he is confirmed at 65 after 8. And McCoole will just connect with the left of the object pin, leaving the 3, the 6, the 7, and the 10 on the deck. And the 7 pin falls late for a 9 for McCoole. That's 74 after 9 with that late falling 7 pin. So we briefly call upon Nick Soucy's services to perform the score correction to make it official due to the late falling pin in the automatic scoring at Leda Lanes, provided by Cubica AMF BES, recently installed early last year and put to the test during the 2024 Easter Classic at Leda Lanes. And Casey McCoole is on the right of the head pin and drops 6. That's the 5, excuse me. That's the 4 horsemen on the left side plus the 9 on the deck. Casey McCoole fires, and he's just to the left of the object pin. He beans the 2 full back. Leaves the 1, the 4, the 7, and the 9. McCoole. And he'll take one more out for a 7. For 53 in 7. No, I'm sorry, not 53 in 7. What am I saying? 81. 81 after 10. That was me getting distracted in the funniest way possible. So Casey McCoole opens up the first game with 81 after 10. Nick Soucy 46 after 5. Nick Soucy opens up with a head pin shot and a 7 drop and a split. That's the 2, the 8, and the 10 on the deck. Soucy fires, and it's just off to the right of the 2, takes the 8, leaves the 2 and the 10. Nick Soucy has the 11th high class average in Class D North at 101.6. It's an 8 box for Nick Soucy. He's at 54 after 6. He's currently 2 for 6 on the head pin. Both head pin shots have been splits. This Nick Soucy in the baby blue shirt on your right on lane 32 at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. He's currently first place in D North Division 3, and that's a 7 drop. Another head pin shot and another split. Every head pin shot Nick Soucy has had today has been a split. That's the 2, the 7, and the 8 on the deck. Nick Soucy is currently second place in the wild card. Number 2 seed overall. And we're going to pause for lane maintenance. Actually, I might go down and check it. Hello, my name is Steve Kelly. I occasionally also do wayward pin checks. But Nick Soucy's on the object pin. He takes all but the 8. Piece of wood across the 8. That he's shooting at. And that'll be a 10 box for Nick Soucy. And that'll be 64 after 7 confirmed for Nick Soucy. So since I went down there, I can tell you for sure that piece of wood was an inch ahead of the legal line down there. So one of those things where it's really, really close, and sometimes it's hard to see depending on which house you're at. Some houses like Lakeside actually have the lights exactly tuned to where that line is. Some places like Leda, it's a little less certain. And that's Nick Soucy with a 6-drop. Right side, 4 horsemen down there on the deck. For the spare, Nick Soucy, he fires. Just a little bit off. His release was just a little bit to the right of the center. And it didn't tail to the left. He's left with the head pin on the deck. For the 10 box, he'll take 9. That's 73 after 8 for Nick Soucy. Still ahead of Casey McCool's 65 and after 8 at the same point in the match. Casey McCoole presently has a lead of 8, 2 boxes ahead of Nick Soucy, so Nick Soucy effectively needs a 9 box to take the first game. Nick Soucy in good positioning here. To the right of the head pin, he fires, and 8 will fall. Gets a nice mix out of it. The 1 and the 3 are down on the deck for a spare shot. And the pitch from Soucy is on the head pin, and it kicks around the sidewall, doesn't touch the 3. It was a good bid. It was just a bit of a light hit and an awkward bounce. 9 box or 10 box for Nick Soucy. This will put him at 82 or 83. That will be an 82 with that 9 box after 9 frames for Mr. Nick Soucy. Casey McCoole is at 74 after 9 at the same point in the match. Presently, Nick Soucy has 3 headpin shots. Casey McCoole has 4. And that was a pitch off to the right. Off to the corner for Nick Soucy. But he does have the first game already as of the 9th box. 82 to Casey McCool's 81 in the 10th. Nick Soucy's on the headpin for the remedial second ball, but he leaves the bucket of 5 on the left. That's the diamond left side in the 7. And Soucy's on the object pin, but gets an awkward mix, but he'll finish with 90 after 10. And just looking up real quick, those scores are confirmed. We are in sync with the automatic score system at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. So the first game of 5 goes to Nick Soucy with 2 points out of a possible 14-point award today. Nick Soucy has 2 so far, up by 9. Casey McCoole 81, Nick Soucy 90. The lead is 9 in the game and the match. Nick Soucy with the only spares so far and the only marks so far. 3 headpin shots for Soucy, but Casey McCoole is in the lead in terms of the headpin department. Both bowlers with 3 splits so far. So we will be moving on ahead to the second game here, taking a walk down to the second game. And it appears we might just be pausing here for just a moment for Nick Soucy. But Casey McCoole will start in the meantime. On the headpin in a slow-moving 8-drop. Oh, and it's not a split. It's going to be a 9-drop. Casey McCoole gestures back to me, happy that that pin fell. So that's the 4-pin down there that he's shooting for. And he collides with the object wood, but the wood actually curves around the 4 and doesn't take it. It's one of those shots where sometimes it might go and sometimes it might not. That's the entropy of candlepin bowling. And that's a 9 box for Casey McCoole, 9 after 1 so far. While we have a moment, let's take a look at Casey McCool's stats once again. He's in Class D North Division 1. He was in Class D North Division 4 last year. So same class, just slightly different division in the divisional shuffle. And Casey McCoole is on the headpin once again, and another 9-drop. Let's see if he gets a second chance at this on the 7-pin. And McCoole fires. It's looking good, and that is good. It's going to be a spare for Mr. McCoole. That's 19 and a bonus after 2 for Casey McCoole. Happy with himself after that one. After the first frame, spare ball didn't quite award him similar results. It's one of those things in candlepin bowling. You can have a very similar shot, and sometimes it might go, and sometimes it might not. So you never know. Casey McCoole, he's on the headpin to the left of the headpin. And that's a left side half Worcester. That's a 2 fill on a spare for 21 after 2. Casey McCoole, he's on the 1 and the 3. The 5 goes, the 4 and the 7 do not. So no spare for Casey McCoole. Currently 21 after 2. And McCoole for the 10 box, he'll take 8 for 29 after 3. That is the story for Casey McCoole after 3 frames here in the second game of 5. He's 3 frames of 5 at the top of the second. McCoole with 6 headpin shots today, a 46% quarterback rating. And he's to the left of the headpin, drops 6. The 1, the 3, the 6, and the 10 are on the deck for a spare shot. Let's fix my wide shot here. Sorry about that, I wasn't exactly ready for the wide shot. So the short of it is, Casey McCoole will take a 9 box. For 38 after 4. Casey McCoole has one box left before he sits. 38 after 4 so far. 119, 1.5 game total so far, with 1 frame to go, and that's another headpin shot for Casey McCoole in an 8 drop. The 6 and the 10 are on the deck. McCoole on the 6 and the 10. Oh, and it looked good, and it had a great curve to it, but it collided too direct with the 6 pin and didn't take the 10. McCoole for the 10 box. That was another awesome curve by Casey McCoole. In particular, a nice controlled curve ball that tails into the 10 and takes it for a 10 box. 48 after 5 for Casey McCoole. And there might be a score correction I might need to put in. Yes, it was actually a 3 fill on the spare, not a 2. My apologies. Sometimes those are hard to read. So, correction, that's 49 after 5 for Casey McCoole. We do kind of this 3-way verification between the automatic score system down there, the paper copy, and the stream copy. The stream copy is unofficial, though, no matter which way you swing it. So Nick Soucy's not on the headpin, but he gets a mix of 7 after everything settles. The 1, the 6, and the 10 are down on the deck. Soucy. He's just off to the left. Nick Soucy with the 11th high class D average at 101.6 in D North. He has the 8th class high single at 140. And Nick Soucy will miss the 2nd and get the 3rd on that shot. Some may call that a Paul Grant special, in which you miss on the 2nd ball and get it on the 3rd. That's a $1 donation to Candlepins per Cancer per occurrence. Paul Grant is always watching, folks. And Nick Soucy with the quarter Worcester. And the quarter Worcester is when you take out the 2 or the 3 on their own, and you don't even have the benefit of taking the 8 or the 9. That's what the quarter Worcester is. And Nick Soucy's off to the left in the back corner, takes a few more out, doesn't have a mark. This is for a 10 box. And he'll take 7 for 17 after 2 for Casey McCoole. Set 17 after 2 for Nick Soucy. And on the head pin, that's a strike for Nick Soucy. Late falling 8 pin falls last, but doesn't matter how they fall, it's just if they fall. That's a strike for Nick Soucy. That's 27 and a bonus after 3. His first head pin shot of this second game. 4 head pin shots, 3 splits. Currently, Nick Soucy only has 1 mark before the strike, in which he filled with 4, so we'll see where this goes. Soucy on the head pin, and, well, at least you get 2. That's a split and a 3-pin spread eagle with a talon. This ball will complete the fill for Mr. Nick Soucy. And late falling pin curves around to the 3. I thought it was possibly going to take the 3 as well, but that's an 8 fill after all said and done. Should be 35 after 3 for Nick Soucy. Digging himself out of that hole. They'll have the score corrected down there. And that's a 10 box for Nick Soucy. 45 after 4 should be the count. Waiting on the bowlers to perform their own score correction, though. So you saw it down here. It was Nate Phil, but just a matter of semantics there. And that's Soucy on the head pin with an 8 drop. The 2 and the 4 are on the deck. Soucy on the 4 and the 2 and the 4. And he very lightly takes down the 2, pinballs all around, but leaves the 4 to its own devices. Now Soucy's shooting for a 10 box, and he'll get his third 10 box of the game so far, and that puts him at 55 after 5 for Mr. Nick Soucy. That puts him up by 6 in this game so far over Casey McCool's 49 after 5. Currently 1.5 game total of 145 for Nick Soucy and a 1.5 game total of 130 for Casey McCoole. That's currently where we sit here on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, this Class D North match between Casey McCoole, our away bowler, and Nick Soucy, our home bowler, here at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. Casey McCoole on the head pin, he fires. It's a 5 drop. It's a bucket of 5 on the left, with wood all around it. The 2 pin is still the operative pin to hit. And McCoole, ball is way off to the right. Something went wrong on the release there. So no mark for Casey McCoole. We'll see if we have another PGS situation. But he punches right through the center for a 7 box. That puts him at 56 after 6. So since it wasn't score corrected down there, I am going to change Nick Soucy's spare fill to a 7. It was technically an 8, but need to follow what the bowlers say down there, so that's always a thing. It's always the bowlers who have the final say, so if it goes uncorrected, it goes uncorrected. A little bit like the NFL. So Casey McCoole was on the head pin on the first ball. The second ball was an overcorrection to the right. The 1, the 5, and the 8 are left on the deck. McCoole shooting for a 10 box on the 1, the 5, and the 8. And he'll take the 8, leaving the 1 and the 5 for an 8 box. That's 64 after 7 for Casey McCoole. Hope you're enjoying this match here on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, this Class D North action. Broadcasting via 3-ball spare on twitch.tv as well as youtube.com today, and sharing the link on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour page on Facebook. We had another technical issue in which we were apparently unable to stream directly to the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour page on Facebook, so this is the backup method. I do understand the title of the stream on YouTube, and Twitch may be set as a test stream, but this time it very much is a real stream. Casey McCoole leaves the 9 on the deck. No mark for Casey McCoole. This is for a 10 box, and he'll take a 10 for 74 after 8 for Casey McCoole. And McCool's off to the right of the head pin. Not a whole lot to say about that one. And he leaves the 3 and the 7 on the deck. So there's no mark for Casey McCoole there. Casey McCoole, in his past 5 matches, he had 1 strike, 32 spares, and 52 tens. He averaged 10.4 tens per match, and that's an 8 box for Casey McCoole in the 9th. And that puts him at 82 in 9 for Mr. Casey McCoole. And McCoole, to the left of the head pin, he drops 6. 1, 3, 8, 10 on the deck. And he's on the 1-3 pocket, but a little bit light. He takes the 1, the 3, the 10, he leaves the 8. So no mark for Casey McCoole. This will be another game under 100. It's going to be a potential 92, and with that 10 box, it is a 92. One heck of a spin ball, one heck of a spinning pin down there, candle spin bowling. So that is going to be 92 after 2 for Casey McCoole. Excuse me, 92 in the second for Casey McCoole for a 2-game total of 173. Nick Soucy has to secure 39 pins to take 2 points this game in 5 boxes. So that is the benchmark for Nick Soucy to reach. And we will now see the results of that challenge to Nick Soucy. And Nick Soucy looked like he slipped a little bit, but got a 6 drop out of it. The 1, the 2, the 5, and the 9. Soucy on the 1, 2, 5, and 9 for a spare. And he's on it, but the wood thwarts the final pin from going down. It was the correct object pin shot. It was just the way the wood was positioned and angled that prevented that shot from becoming a spare. Instead, he'll settle for a 10. His third 10 box in a row and his fourth 10 box of the game for 64 and 6 for Nick Soucy. Nick Soucy has 1 strike and 1 spare, 6 head pin shots, 4 splits, totaling 11 in bonus pins and fills, averaging 5.5 per mark. And he's right on the head pin with a split. Another spread eagle. I think that is probably our 4th spread eagle we've seen today across both of our bowlers. That's a 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 10. And Soucy shooting for the spare, and he sails right through the center. It's Nick Soucy versus the official bird of the United States. And he'll take 2 pins out of the right side wing for a 6 box for 70 and 7. And that score is confirmed. And it is 92 after 2 for Casey McCoole. Just double and triple checking all of the numbers. And Nick Soucy to the left of the head pin. He drops 6. That's the 1, 3, 9, 10. And he's just off the object, leaves the 1 and the 3 on the deck. So no mark, but could be another 10 box. Nick Soucy very good at the 10 boxes this game in particular. Just a matter of pinning it out. Every pin counts, and he'll beam the head pin just a little bit too much to leave the 3 for a 9 box. That puts him at 79 after 8. But he's already secured the second game, 79 to Casey McCoole, 74 in the 8th. So he already has a lead in the game by 5, and will take another 2 points. So Nick Soucy with 4 points so far. And Soucy's off to the right. Take a few pins off the right side and take the 8 pin, well, oddly enough. And he's right on the head pin, but a little bit too full. The 3, 4, 7 stand on the deck. For a 7, 8, 9, or 10 box for Nick Soucy. Third ball. Nearly a 10 box. The pin's real good sidewall action there, but it'll be 88 in 9 for Nick Soucy. And Soucy fires, and he'll drop 6, leaving the 1, the 3, the 7, and the 10 on the deck. 1, 3, 7, 10 for Nick Soucy. And he's just off to the left. Bit of a misfire on that second ball. The 1, the 3, the 7, and the 10 remain on the deck. There's a piece of wood slightly to the right and diagonal of the 3. Nick Soucy will collide with the 3 and the 10, leaving the 1 and the 7, and that'll be an 8 box and a 96 second game for Nick Soucy. And that is confirmed. That puts Nick Soucy at a 2-game total of 186, up by 13 in the total and he will take the second game by 4. Casey McCoole 92, Nick Soucy 96 in the second game. Nick Soucy takes the second game by 2, and that's his second win in a row in terms of this 5-game series. 4 points for Nick Soucy, 0 points for Casey McCoole. Nick Soucy has the total by 13 with 186 versus Casey McCoole's 173. That is the current story of the second game here on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. Let's talk about Nick Soucy while we have just a moment here. So Nick Soucy has the #1 total strikes in Class D North at 25. He has the 6th class average strike fill at 8.84. The #4 class high series at 576. The 10th class total spares in D North at 86. And the 10th total 10 boxes in D North at 96. Just to give you some info on that there. Anyways, we are ready to go. Casey McCoole, Indiana Jones McCoole, is on the headpin with a really interesting split and a drop of 6. And the second ball for the spare is just a little bit off. But he will take a nice 10 box to start out. That's 10 after 1 for Mr. Casey McCoole. Casey McCoole today, 10 headpin shots for 20, 4 splits. Compare that to Nick Soucy's 7 for 10 on the headpin and 5 splits. Excuse me, 10 for 21 for Casey McCoole. Casey McCoole's opening pitch of the second ball is a 5 drop to the left of the headpin. Four horsemen right side and a friend. And will the friend go? The friend will go. Friendster.com, that's 20 after 2 and a bonus for Casey McCoole. Again, it doesn't matter how it goes, just as long as it goes. Casey McCoole, in his recent match against Bill Olson in round 9, an away game at Leda Lanes, he took 10 points with a 477 series with a 92, 104, 101, 78, and I believe a 10 something. I apparently didn't write that down entirely on my notes. That's a 3 fill for Casey McCoole, off target. And McCoole, that second ball was on target, though. The 6 and the 10 are left on the deck. It was a bit of a full shot, but a good shot regardless. He had 0 strikes, 8 spares, and 12 10s in that match against Bill Olson, with 19 headpin shots and 13 splits, and that's a 10 box for Casey McCoole in the third for 33 after 3. Casey McCoole is perfect this game so far with 2 10 boxes and a spare. Just that 3 fill on the spare was the only foible there. So Casey McCoole, 10 for 23 on the headpin with 4 splits. McCoole. Lemon drop plus a friend. Not an official lemon drop because an extra pin fell. First ball was off to the right. The 6 and the 9 are down. McCoole's on the headpin there, but gets an awkward mix where the 3, the 4, and the 10 are left on the deck. Indiana Jones himself, for as close as you can get. Casey McCoole works at the NH State Liquor and Wine Outlet. It's from Derry, New Hampshire, Pinkerton Academy. That's an 8 box for Casey McCoole in the fourth for 41 after 4. Score confirmed. Last season, Casey McCoole's home house was Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. This year, his home lanes are Boutwell's Bowling Center in Concord, New Hampshire. His catchphrase is, "Pull the string." You may know him when we reference Casey McCoole and the banana split. And that second ball, and that first ball of the next frame here, of the 5th frame, is very reminiscent of the previous one where he takes out the 6 and the 9. Casey McCoole takes a few more out. No mark, but he can salvage it with a 5 box or greater on the 3rd ball. McCoole will take one more out, and that will be a 6 box for Casey McCoole, and that is the half for McCoole. Bit of a struggle there at the end, but he will finish with 47 after 5. And those scores are confirmed here on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, this Class D North action here at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. And here's Nick Soucy. In his past 5 matches, he's taken 44 points, 11 strikes, 45 spares, and 48 tens. The standout stat has been 9 spares per match. That's Nick Soucy starting out. On the headpin, 7 drop. Right side triangle. That's the 5, the 6, and the 3. Down there. And Nick Soucy is just a little bit off to the left of the object pin. He takes the 5 pin, leaves the 3 and the 6 unharmed. Soucy will open with a 9. Nick Soucy in his past 5 matches, he's totaled 2,512 total pins, averaging 502.4 pins. And Soucy's to the right of the headpin, drops 3. Right side candlepin corner, the 6, 9, 10 are down. Soucy for the spare. On lane 31. Bit of a wavering motion after that throw. He punches 2 more out to the left. And Soucy will take 2 more, maybe a third. It will be a third. It will be an 8 box. After 2, he has 17. We're having a fantastic time at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire, watching Casey McCoole challenge Nick Soucy at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire, here on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. That is an 8 drop for Nick Soucy. He drops all but the 6 and the 10 on the deck. Soucy for the spare. Oh, and the ball sails into the gutter and gets careened out of play. The 6 and the 10 are left on the deck, and thankfully they're not knocked down for any fouls. Soucy for the cleanup. That is what some may call a Paul Grant special. Third ball was the correction to the second ball. Miss the second, get the third. That's the Paul Grant special. Stay with us for all the action here on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. You're watching Nick Soucy in the baby blue at Leda Lanes. And Soucy, Nick Spicy. He's to the right of the headpin. That's another candlepin corner 3 drop on the back right side. Got to find a way to kick that habit in some way. Soucy fires on the second ball, and he's on the object pocket there and takes everything but the 3. It was a good second ball. Just have to make that the first ball going forward. Soucy will take a 9 in the 4th for 36 after 4. With 1 to go before he sits, we say hello to Casey McCoole once again. Nick Soucy is the only one with a strike so far. 1 spare. Casey McCoole has 0 strikes and 2 spares. 9 headpin shots for Nick Soucy, 10 headpin shots for Casey McCoole so far this game. And that's Nick Soucy down there with a 6 drop, and that, right there, is the headpin shot first ball he was looking for. The 2, the 4, the 7, and the 8 are together for a spare, and he kicks the wood off target. Takes only the 2, leaves the 4, the 7, and the 8 on the deck. Soucy for a 10 box, and he'll take 1 more out for an 8. Bit of a hard-fought half he went to war for. Nick Soucy trails by 3 in this game at the half, 44 after 5 to Casey McCoole's 47 after 5. Nick Soucy had 3 headpin shots for 5 this game, McCoole with just 1. Currently, a 2.5 game total of 230 for Nick Soucy. And a 2.5 game total of 220 for Casey McCoole. It's a difference of 10 here at halftime of this 5-game series match, the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, this Class D North. And in case you want to know who else is in Class D North, here are the divisional readouts. There are 4 bowlers in each division. Nick Soucy is in Division 3. Casey McCoole is in Division 1. And the bowlers will bowl folks in their schedules across all divisions, and at the beginning and the ends of the season, it's a showdown within their own division. So if you can think of matchups similar to the way it works in the NFL, it's very similar in the Atlantic Cannibal Singles Tour. Casey McCoole's first ball was a gutter ball. Started too far to the right. Second ball is an overcorrection, goes too far to the left. He takes the 7. Casey McCoole hopefully with something greater than a 1 box here. Let's see what McCoole can do. And he's much better third ball and a good out for a 7 box for Casey McCoole for 54 after 6. 54 after 6 for Casey McCoole. He's still in the hunt for a strike. He has 2 spares. He's the leader of spares, but has no strikes. Casey McCoole's off to the right of the head pin, drops 5. That's the 1, the 2, the 7, the 8, and the 10 on the deck. McCoole for the spare shot. He's just off, just a little bit. The 1, the 2, the 8, and the 10 are left on the deck for Casey McCoole. And he'll take the head pin, but leave 3 others on the deck for a 7 box. His second 7 box in a row. 61 after 7 for Casey McCoole. All scores are confirmed up to this point. Casey McCoole in his past 5 matches, he's totaled 2310 pins in total pinfall, averaging 462 per match. That's Casey McCoole with a thin hit, not on the head pin. Second ball, on the head pin. The 5 pin is left on the deck. No mark for Casey McCoole, but it was a very good effort. Casey McCoole for the 10 box. He'll take that 10 for 71 after 8 for Casey McCoole. And McCoole's off to the right of the head pin. Not a lemon drop, but not much more I can say about it. Just a couple of additional pins, 1 or 2 there. McCoole fires. And he'll take a few more out. The 1, the 2, the 8, and the 10 are left on the deck. And that's going to be 7 for Casey McCoole in the 9th. 78 after 9 for Mr. Casey McCoole. Casey McCoole, 10 for 29 on the head pin today with 4 splits. Nick Soucy is 10 for 25 on the head pin with 5 splits. And McCoole is off to the left of the head pin on the 7, and only the 7. McCool's shooting for a spare here at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire, and he's on the head pin. And the 10 pin gets nudged to the right, but it doesn't actually fall, believe it or not. In fact, let's take a look at that. Look how far the 10 pin got pushed. Wild. So Casey McCool shooting for a 10 to conclude the 3rd. It's going to be a 9. And that's going to put Casey McCool at 87 in the 3rd. And that's going to put him at a 3-game total of 260 with that 87 for Mr. Casey McCool. 10 headpin shots for 30, 4 splits. Nick Soucy has to secure 43 to tie and 44 to win the 3rd game here on the Atlantic Cannibal Singles Tour. So where are we today? We're at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire, established in 1959 with 36 lanes. Leda Lanes has a variety of things to do. It's also the former TV spot for WNDS Candlepin Stars and Strikes, if you remember that show from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. Its final few seasons were filmed at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire, actually on lanes 33 and 34, which are just to the right of us today. We're on lanes 31 and 32. Lanes 33 and 34 are also popular destinations for a show that Candlepin Corner puts on called Skins. and that is filmed here at Leda Lanes. Had roll-offs for that just this past fall. And the Men's World's 2024 International Candlepin Championships were hosted at Leda Lanes this past November. I bowled on the home Leda team with Nick Soucy's father, Matt Soucy, actually. We had a great time the whole week. It was a fantastic time. Competitive matches, really long days, and lots of bowling. Lots of ibuprofen for sure. Nick Soucy wasn't on the head pin on the first ball. Second ball is an overcorrection to the left. He mixes down all but 2 pins in the front, the 1 and the 2 on the deck. Soucy for a 10 box on the 1 and the 2. And he'll take a 9. That's 53 after 6 for Nick Soucy. Nick Soucy for the opening pitch in the 7th frame of the 3rd game. Soucy fires. And he drops 6. That's the 1, the 5, the 3, and the 8 on the deck. For the spare shot, Nick Soucy, he needs to be on the head pin. He's off to the right, and he drops 8. For the 10 box, he's still having trouble finding that head pin. That's a 9 box for Nick Soucy. That's 62 after 7. Up by 1 in the 7th against Casey McCoole, 61 in the 7th. That's the story for Nick Soucy so far. Nick Soucy is currently 10 for 27 on the head pin with 5 splits. Casey McCoole went 10 for 30 on the head pin with 4 splits. And it seems at the moment we might have just a little bit of downtime. Oh, nope. Pin loader just needed an extra second just to load the pins. Don't we all? Casey, Nick Soucy, the baby blue shirt, still struggling to find that head pin on the first ball. He drops 6. The 1, the 7, the 8, and the 10 are on the deck. Soucy. And he collides with the wood to the right and behind the head pin. Takes nothing out. For the 10 box. And he's just off to the right. That will be 6 for Nick Soucy. That's 68 after 8. Nick Soucy has 6 out of his 10 matches with double-digit wins. He has 2 out of 10 matches with shutout victories. That means you got 14 points. You went 14-0. And that's Soucy to the right of the head pin once again. Right side candlepin corner. In Nick Soucy's past 5 home matches, he's taken 51 points, averaging 10.2 per match. His longest streak of strings at or over 100 has been 5. His longest streak of matches at or over 475 has been 7. He goes on average 21.8 for 50 on the head pin and on average 11.8 splits per match. And that's Nick Soucy just having a heck of a time down there trying to get some pins. That's a 9 box though. He's at 77 and 9, just down by 1 in the 9th to Casey McCoole's 78 in the 9th and 87 third game. So I believe Nick Soucy understands the assignment. Soucy to the left of the head pin, wasn't on it, but mixed down 6. And actually, let's zoom in on that. That's the 1, the 2, the 5, and the 10 for Nick Soucy. He fires. And he's just off to the, just a little bit. As Casey McCoole just kind of looks at me and gestures going, really? You know, I've been there. And with that 8 box for Nick Soucy, that puts him at 85. And actually, Casey McCoole will take the third game then by 2. 85. Nick Soucy is down by 2 to Casey McCoole's 87 in the third. So Casey McCoole will not go home without points today. That's a 3-game total of 260 for Casey McCoole and a 3-game total of 271 for Nick Soucy. Nick Soucy has the total by 11 still. but Casey McCoole has taken at least one game so far this match. So that's the story of the third game. We're going to take a walk down to the fourth game here on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. It's great to have you along with us. I'm Steve Kelly on the call on this Friday evening at Leda Lanes on January 10th, 2025. We start at 4 o'clock. It's now about 5 o'clock. And we are watching Casey McCoole getting ready to start out on lane 31 here at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. Casey McCoole is ready to fire, and he does to the left of the headpin. Takes a left side candlepin corner of 3. The 4, the 7, and the 8 are taken out. Casey McCoole on lane 31 on the headpin. A bit of a light hit, but pins are still mixing down. The 3 and the 9 are on the deck. He's going to be shooting for a 10 box. The 9 pin is the sleeper pin to the 3 pin. And McCoole will just be off of it to the left. That's an 8 box after 1 for Casey McCoole. Casey McCoole's bowling balls are a mix of Cobras and Vipers. He curves the ball right to center, similar to Chris Curley's release. Chris Curley was a bowler who bowled in the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour last season. Casey McCoole's ball is very similar. It's kind of like a 10-pin style release, and that was a shot by Casey McCoole in an 8-drop. Piece of wood far in front of the 8 and the 9, and it might be rolling out of play, and you don't want it out of play, but it seems like that's what he's going to have to deal with. So McCoole, he has to pick a stick. Very thin possibility of getting a spare here. He does get 1 stick, so he can weasel his way out of this with a 10 box if he can just take the 9 pin. And McCoole will fire, and he'll take a 9 for 17 after 2 for Casey McCoole. Indiana Jones. McCoole is still in the hunt for a strike. 2 spares. Nick Soucy has 1 strike and 1 spare. Both bowlers have the same total amount of marks. McCoole with 11 headpin shots today. And he's off to the right of the headpin, dropping 5. The 1, the 2, the 4, the 7, and the 9 are on the deck. McCoole, 1, 2, 4, 7, 9. And he'll take the 4 and leave everything else. Nick Soucy warms up in the background. And McCoole, he'll take the 2 and leave everything else. That's a 7 box for Casey McCoole. That puts him at 24 after 3. That is confirmed. Casey McCoole, on average, his headpin average per match is 20.3 for 50. His split average per match is 11.3. He has 4 out of 9 matches with double-digit wins. Casey McCoole, in his past 5 away matches, he's taken 18 points, averaging 3.6 per match. Now it's Casey McCoole who took the 7 pin and only the 7 pin on the first ball. Second ball is a bit of a better angle, but he only takes a few more out. He wasn't on the object pin, which was the head pin in this case. And McCoole will finish with 9 for 33 after 4. Casey McCoole, first ball, final first ball of the first half of the 4th game. It's on the headpin. There's a headpin shot, and there's a split for Casey McCoole. That's a spread eagle and a friend. The 7 pin is also down. The 4, 6, 2, 3, 10. And McCoole fires a little bit too much to the left. That's the 3, 6, 10 down there. No mark for Casey McCoole. For the 10 box, he'll take 7. That's 40 after 5 for Casey McCoole. 40 after 5 for Casey McCoole, and a 3.5 game total of 300 for Casey McCoole. Nick Soucy with a 3-game total of 271. And you can imagine that is the benchmark that Mr. Nick Soucy needs to attain. So Nick Soucy opens up with a 6-drop. He's to the left of the head pin. The 1, the 3, the 6, and the 9 are on the deck. Nick Soucy shooting for the spare. Oh, Will it come back to steal the headpin? It will go. Nick Soucy was wildly off target, but he got a nice sidewall kick of the piece of wood for the spare to come back to take the headpin that he didn't collide with. That's 10 and a bonus after 1 for Nick Soucy. There's a story behind that. In one of his recent matches that he was streaming, I'm not sure if it was either in the text that was put on the match itself or in the subtitles or somewhere, but somewhere autocorrected his last name to Spicy. So, and I told Nick the other night at a league at Leda, and I said, you know, you never get to pick your nicknames. And guess what nickname you just got? So, and then a couple times I've referenced it on a couple of Facebook posts, and I know Jordan Britton was like, now you got me paranoid to make sure I don't miswrite it or misspell it. And, you know, we could just codify it if you want to just be more confident about that. Anyways, that's a 7 fill for Nick Soucy to the right of the headpin, but got a nice split, a nice mix out of it, I mean. The 1, the 2, and the 4 on the deck. Soucy, can he get 2 in a row? He's just off. He takes the 2, has the 1 and the 4 on the deck. 7 fill, 17 after 1 for Nick Soucy. And for the 10 box, he'll take 8. 25 after 2 for Nick Soucy. And just saying hello to all the folks on both youtube.com live as well as twitch.tv live. If you like this content and want to see more, I invite you to subscribe to this channel as well as the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour page on Facebook and youtube.com. Whichever your fancy will be there, as well as my page, 3 Ball Spare, on Facebook and youtube.com as well. And Nick Soucy wasn't on the headpin and missed the spare. The 1, the 2, the 4, and the 7 are on the deck on lane 31, and that will be an 8 box for Nick Soucy, 33 after 3. Nick Soucy's seasonal high 5 is 576. In his rookie season in the ACST, his high single is 140. His average is 101.5 for the season. Nick Soucy with a mix, and will he steal the strike? Oh my goodness. He wasn't on the headpin, but he got a fantastic sidewall bump and wood roll that took everything out, and he stole himself a nice strike. That's 43 and a bonus for Nick Soucy in the 4th. And they're just going to score correct it because when the pins fall late or fall slowly, the sensor takes a snapshot of that at that precise point. So that's just when a bowler has to intervene and just put the score correction in. So no biggie. It's a system primarily designed for 10-pin at its heart, so it's a little bit, it has to be adapted for candlepin, just a little bit here and there. And Nick for the spare fill, that was the second ball. The first ball wasn't on the headpin. The second ball ended up totaling 8 on the strike fill for 51 after 4. And that's a 10 box for Nick Soucy. A nice cleanup and a fantastic way to salvage his half. That's 61 after 5 for Nick Soucy. And that puts him at a considerable lead to Casey McCool's 40 after 5, up in the game by 21 at the half. 3.5 game total of 332 for Nick Soucy. Currently standing at 6 points to Casey McCool's 2, 3.5 games in. And Nick Soucy, he has retained the total almost exclusively this entire match. He currently holds on to it by 32, 332, 3.5 game total to Casey McCool's 300. That's currently the story here of 3.5 games at the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, this Class D North Friday evening action at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. I'm going to say hello to Casey McCoole one more time on lane 32 at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. Nick Soucy's strike was so powerful that it kind of knocked lane 31 into submission, so he just saw Sean Howard run down there to go fix the lane, so we thank Sean Howard for jumping in to save us there. It's Casey McCoole, not on the headpin, drops 5 on the first ball. Second ball sails off to the left. The 1, the 5, the 3, the 8, and the 9 are on the deck. For the 10 box, and Casey McCoole misfires, calls an audible. It's a 5 box. That's 45 after 6 for Casey McCoole. That is confirmed. And McCoole on the head pin. That was a great shot and a split. A late falling 9 drop for Casey McCoole. He's left with the 5 pin on the deck. Casey McCoole 13 for 37 on head pin shots today with 6 splits. Nick Soucy 10 for 35 on the head pin and with 5 splits. Casey McCoole has a single pin spare that he's shooting at. It's on the 5 pin with effectively no wood. And McCoole is just a little bit off to the left. Probably just thought about it just a little bit too much. So for the 10 box, McCoole fires. And he'll take a 10 box for 55 after 7. Nick Soucy with 2 strikes and 2 spares. Casey McCoole with 0 strikes and 2 spares. Casey McCoole presently only totaling 6 in fills, while Nick Soucy has really pulled ahead in the fills department in particular, 26, averaging 6.5 per mark, while Casey McCoole is only at averaging 3 per mark. And that's a 6 drop for Casey McCoole to the right of the head pin this time. It's the 1, 2, 4, 7, the 4 horsemen. Left side. There's no wood on this 4 horsemen. You have to connect with the 1, 2 pocket and run them all down. But he connects with the 4 and the 7, leaving the 1 and the 2. And McCoole fires off to the right. There's an 8 box for 63 and 8 for Mr. Casey McCoole. And here's Casey McCoole stats again. He's bowled 9 matches so far, 37% perfect box percentage with 4,340 seasonal total pins. Compare that to 5,078 seasonal total pins after 10 matches for Nick Soucy. So it's just kind of a comparison there, just to give you an idea. And that's to the left of the head pin for Casey McCoole. That's a 4 drop. The 1, the 5, the 3, the 6, the 9, and the 10 are on the deck. And McCoole for the spare. He's just off to the left, but he gets a nice mix. Everything but the head pin falls. I've seen a lot of that today, where if you miss the head pin, it seems everything but the head pin goes. And that will be a 9 for Casey McCoole. That will be 72 after 9. 332 in the total so far, with 1 box to go before we finish the 4th and assess Casey McCoole's 4-game total. McCoole to the left of the head pin, just on the 7. Everything else remains on the deck. McCoole for the spare to the left of the head pin on the remedial second ball. He's left with the 1, the 5, the 3, the 6, the 9, and the 10. Casey McCoole's longest streak of matches at or over 475 is 4 again. And he has a current 5-game streak of strings at or over 100. And that is a 9-box for Casey McCoole, and that's 81 in the 10th. 10th frame in the 4th game for Casey McCoole, for a 4-game total of 341 for Casey McCoole. Nick Soucy just needs 20 pins to maintain the game, and 9 pins for the total. That's where we currently stand. Anyways, here comes Nick Soucy to the right of the head pin, dropping 7. The 1, the 2, and the 4 on the deck. Soucy on the 1, 2, 4. He's just off the head pin to the left. For the 10 box, Nick Soucy will kiss down the 1 pin for the 10. Second 10 box in a row, and 3 perfect boxes in a row. That's 71 after 6 for Nick Soucy. Well on his way to conquer Casey McCoole's 81 in the 4th. Nick Soucy, Nick Spicy, first ball. On the head pin. Nice split, 5-7. Difficult split to convert. Excellent first ball, but it's one of those situations where sometimes the first ball just doesn't quite work out. Nick Soucy will take the 5 and leave the 7. That's about the best he could have done with that one. Sometimes it's just best to just pick a stick and move on. Pinning it out for a 10 box, every pin counts, as we say in the Worlds. And that'll be a 9 for Nick Soucy. That's 80 and 7. He just needs one pin to tie with Casey McCool's 81, and he has 3 frames to do it. So I think it's fairly safe to ascertain that Nick Soucy will take the 4th game at this point. Soucy fires to the right of the head pin. Takes down 4. The center diamond, the 4, and the 7 are on the deck. And Soucy right on it, and he, for all intents and purposes, that really should have been a spare ball. And the 10 pin was even touched, and it wiggled a little bit, but the wood just didn't mix correctly. So for the 10 box now, Nick Soucy will take that 10 for 90 in 8. And he does have the 4th game secured now. So Nick Soucy with a guaranteed 6 points, Casey McCoole with a guaranteed 2 points so far. Before we move on to the 5th and final game, which will be worth technically 6 points, because that's the last time you can go for the total. That's a headpin shot and a 7-10 split for Nick Soucy. Only his 2nd headpin shot of the string. The 7 and the 10 with a piece of wood directly in the center. And that piece of wood might be in a place where you could be able to send the wood left and send the ball right. Let's see what Nick Soucy does. And unfortunately, not a whole lot going on there. He plays the wood, and I thought he was going to get at least one of those 2 pins, but the 10 pin got touched and didn't fall, and the 7 pin was just left alone. So that'll be an 8 box for Nick Soucy. Just rough spares for both of our bowlers today, all around in general. That's kind of the story of this match, really. Nick Soucy 12 for 39 on the head pin today with 7 splits. 2 strikes, 2 spares. Nick Soucy to the left of the head pin, and he drops 7. The 1, the 3, and the 7 are on the deck. And Soucy looking for a spare here. And he's on the head pin, but a little bit too full on the head pin, unfortunately. That's the 3 and the 7 on the deck. Soucy. It's off to the right, takes an 8 for 106 in the 10th at the end of the 4th game. So that's a 4-game total of... Sorry. 4-game total of 377 for Nick Soucy. He'll take the 4th game by 25, 106 to Casey McCool's 81, and Nick Soucy with a total of 377 after 4 games, up by 36 over Casey McCool's 341. And just checking, those scores are confirmed. Always like to double check. So two strikes for Nick Soucy, 2 spares for Nick Soucy, 2 spares for Casey McCoole, but no strikes for Casey McCoole, and that's kind of really the key difference. Other than that, our bowlers are almost identical in terms of the headpin and split differentials. Nick Soucy has 12 headpin shots to Casey McCool's 13. Nick Soucy has 7 splits to Casey McCool's 6. So a lot of these numbers are actually very, very, very close. So just to kind of give you an idea, sometimes it just comes down to very small adjustments or very small numbers that can just kind of change everything here on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. So we are just going to briefly just take a quick break here on as we transition to the 5th game. And in case you missed it, here's how we can read the scoreboard in case you're a little bit confused or just wondering what something means. On the left and the right sides of each score tower, it represents the headpin and the split indicators, green for headpin, red for split, or left side for headpin and right side for split, if you're not into seeing colors or anything. There's the double strike, strike, spare, and 10 symbols down there on the slide there, and we're just going to switch back to the action here because Casey McCoole is moving on to the 5th game finally. So that's a headpin shot and a 6-drop right side diamond for Casey McCoole, and he takes the 5 and leaves the 3, the 6, and the 9 on the deck. Diamonds are difficult to break, as Don Gillis always said in Candlepin Bowling with Don Gillis on WCVB Channel 5, and that's a 9 box for Casey McCoole after 1 here in the 5th and final game, which is technically worth 6 points after all said and done, because the 5th game is really the final game where you can maintain control over the total and take the 4 points in grand total pinfall. The 5th game is also worth 2 points, just as every other game is, so if you do the math right or just have a really banger fifth game, you can take 6 points. So that's why I always maintain that the fifth string is always effectively one of the most important ones. So Casey McCoole just having a heck of a time down there. No mark. He's left with the 1 and the 3 on the deck. For an 8, 9, or 10, that'll be a 10 box for Casey McCoole. 19 after 2 for Mr. McCoole. And Casey McCoole. He's not on the head pin, but he drops 6. That's the 1 or 7 late falling pin. 1, 3, and 10 on the deck. Casey McCoole on the head pin, but a little bit too full that time. Leaves the 3 and the 10. Eight box, 9 box, or 10 box for Casey McCoole, and he'll just kind of take a little jump into the gutter for an 8 box for 27 after 3 for Mr. Casey McCoole. 14 headpin shots for Casey McCoole for 43. 12 headpin shots for 40 for Nick Soucy. 7 splits for Nick Soucy, and 6 splits for Casey McCoole. McCoole fires just off to the right of the headpin. He drops 6, 1, 2, 7, 9, 10 for Casey McCoole. And McCoole is on the head pin a little bit too full. He leaves the 7 and the 10. A lot of frustrating shots for both of our bowlers today for sure. Just not a lot of leaves they've really been able to do a whole lot with. And that's going to be a fouled 8 box for Casey McCoole as that score correction goes in. Thank you, Nick Soucy, for putting that in. Always admire the sportsmanship of the bowlers when they call those fouls. It's always the bowler's call, and it's always good to see them always calling that. Candlepin bowling is a really kind of difficult game to score and kind of keep people honest with, and it's a whole thing. So it's one of those things we like to set an example on in the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour in particular to kind of show you how it's done. McCoole with a 7 drop to the right of the head pin. Second ball is playing the wood on the head pin, kicks the head pin and takes the 6, leaves the 9, no mark for Casey McCoole. And McCoole for the 10 box, he'll take a 9, and that will be a markless 44.5 for Casey McCoole at the end of the top of the 5th here. Casey McCoole with only one head pin shot this game so far. So Casey McCoole is finding himself a little bit on the back heel here in this match in general, just having some trouble. But we'll see what happens here. Still plenty of bowling here to go in the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour here as we continue onward to the 5th game for Nick Soucy in particular. And that's Nick Soucy down there with a 7 drop. Again to the right of the head pin. 1, 4, 7 on the deck. That's the 1, the 4, and the 7 for Nick Soucy for a spare. And Soucy will sail through the hole where the 2 pin was. The 1, the 4, and the 7 remain. And Nick Soucy for the 10 box. And that is another situation we like to call the Paul Grant Special, where you miss the 2nd and get the 3rd. And Paul Grant always shakes the collection basket for a $1 donation to Candlepins for Cancer for occurrence. But in all seriousness though, Candlepins for Cancer, candlepins4cancer.com is a fantastic charity organization run by Al Johnson and Paul Grant. And it's for financial assistance for folks in the Candlepin bowling community in need of cancer treatments, financial assistance, and all that. So all jokes aside, it is very much a fantastic organization. There's also bowling tournaments that they host. And check that out by Nick Soucy. That is a fantastic out for a 10 box. That's 20 after 2 for Nick Soucy. The next Candlepins for Cancer roll-offs are going to be at Riverwalk Lanes in Amesbury, Massachusetts, and sign-ups are available on candlepins4cancer.com. And I believe they're starting very, very, very soon here, actually. So check it out, candlepins4cancer.com, And that is a split by Nick Soucy right down the center, punched it right in the face, but for his efforts, he's left with the 2, 3, 6, and 10 on the deck. It's been an interesting shot to convert for Nick Soucy. Soucy plays the left. He wanted to kick the 2 into everything else, but 1 did not take 3. 1 took 1. It's left with the 3, 6, and the 10. For the 10 box, 7 box guaranteed, and I believe that's going to be a fouled 7 for Nick Soucy, as that ball sailed into the gutter. Nick Soucy, 13 for 43 on the headpin today with 8 splits. 2 boxes to go before he finishes the first half of the 5th game. 5th and final game, I might add. And Soucy fires on the headpin. That's another spread eagle. And his face says it all. That's just, we've seen so many of those today. It's one of those situations where I don't know if sometimes it's just like the temperature of the pins, the temperature of the balls, the temperature of the environment around us, but sometimes the pins just don't fall. And that's just kind of the, again, the nature of candlepin bowling that you often have to adapt to. And for the out, it's a good out for Nick Soucy of 7 for 34 and 4. So it's a difference of 1 here in the 4th. Casey McCoole has 35 and 4. Nick Soucy has 34 and 4. And Soucy fires on the headpin, and there we go. That's a bomb of a strike for Nick Soucy. A fantastic way to end it. And like I said, that shot was almost, very, very, very similar to the previous first ball of the 4th frame, but it's something in which you may get a spread eagle, you may get a strike. So Nick Soucy with his 3rd strike of the match. That puts him at 44 and a bonus after 5 at this critical point of the match where Nick Soucy is tied in the game but up in the total by 36 and a bonus. And that will definitely help him maintain that lead in the total and keep him in competition for the 5th. So at the end of the 5th here, it's 44-44. Time for Casey McCoole to show his stuff here. Let's go and finish this match. Casey McCoole will be starting out on lane 32 here at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire. Let's go. McCoole to the left of the headpin. Far off to the left of the headpin for that matter. He's on the 7 pin. Second ball for McCoole is just to the left of the headpin, and he takes a few more. 5 down, 5 up. 1, 3, 6, 8, 10 on the deck. For the 10 box, 5 box guarantee, it's going to be a 6 for Casey McCoole, and that puts him at 50 after 6. Casey McCoole is still in the hunt for a strike. Hasn't quite found it yet. He's been having some trouble with the headpins as well. 14 for 46 with 6 splits. And McCoole to the left of the headpin, he takes a half Worcester on the left side, the 2 and the 8 on the deck. And McCoole nearly a spare. He almost takes it all out. Almost runs it all back. But McCoole will get a nice 10 box for his efforts. With that 10 box, Casey McCoole's at 60 after 7. And McCoole nearly with a strike. Still fishing for his first strike of the match, and that was almost it. That was a 9 drop, left with the 5 pin on the deck. And the problem here is you see that piece of wood down there, that diagonal piece of wood in front of the 5, that is going to be a problem based on its position and how far out it is. And what did I tell you? That's it's kind of disheartening as a bowler to see that, because you see the mark right in front of you and you're like, I can get that, and sometimes just the wood will deflect it, and just like that. It's like he had it in him to get it, but unfortunately, it's another Paul Grant special. Miss the second, get the third. Again, candlepins4cancer.com. Check it out. Casey McCoole is struggling here in the 5th. He's at 70 after 8. And McCoole fires to the right of the head pin. Pin's still mixing 6 down. 1, 2, 4, 7, 1, 2, 4, 10. 1, 2, 4, 10 for Indiana Jones McCoole. Casey McCoole fires on the head pin. 1, 2, 4 go down. The 2 falls last, but the 10 does not go, so that's no mark for Casey in the 9th. For a 10 box on the 10 pin, there'll be a 9 for 79 after 9 for Casey McCoole. So I hope you folks have been enjoying this match so far. And before we go, I'd like to say a couple of special thanks to our ACST committee members, in particular our D-Class Treasurer Nate Lees. Always thanks you folks for keeping us all together in terms of the financial stuff, the prize pool, and everything like that. Casey McCoole is not in the head pin. He drops 6, 1, 2, 5, and 9. I'd like to also thank our ACST statistician, Mike Imperato, and that's a spare for Casey McCoole. A spare he's been wanting for several boxes now. That puts him at 89 and a bonus after 9. That is confirmed. So, again, I'd like to thank Micah Imperato, our ACST statistician. Casey McCoole on the spare fill. It's a 4. Lost the ability to count there for a second. So that's a 4 fill for Casey McCoole and putting him at 93 in the 10th. And that's a 5-game total of 434 for Casey McCoole. He finishes 15 for 50 on the head pin with 6 splits, no strikes, 3 spares, totaling 10 in bonus pins on fills for marks, averaging 3.3 per mark. And we are going to say hello one last time to Nicholas Soucy, the Spicy Man. And that is a spicy first ball. Now it's a right side half Worcester. To complete a strike fill, though, you get 2, and he'll at least take 6 on the fill. That puts him at an even 50 after 5. He's got the 1, the 6, the 8, and the 10 on the deck. For a 10 box, he'll take 2, leave 2. That's 58 after 6 for Nick Soucy. I'd like to also thank Steve Abodeely for providing some of the B-roll and photography. You can check him out at Stabodeely Analog or stabodeely.com, stabodeely.com, for some of his other photography that he does, particularly in the wrestling world and such. I've known Steve Abodeely for a long, long time. Check out his photography. Does an awesome job at it. That's a right side half Worcester for Nick Soucy. Second ball for the spare. He's left with the 1, the 5, the 6, and the 10 on the deck. No mark for Nick Soucy. He's shooting for a 10 box. Soucy for the 10. And he'll just miss it for a 6. That's 64 and 7 for Nick Soucy. Three strikes, 2 spares for Nick Soucy today. 15 for 47 on the head pin with 9 splits. He's totaled 32 in bonus pins on marks. And he's averaged 6.4 per mark. Nick Soucy drops a few. He wasn't on the head pin. 1, 2, 4, 7, 9, 10. He'll take the 10 and nothing else. He's faced with a 5 box or greater here in the 8th. Potential 74 and 8 if he can take all 5. And he'll take 4 of the 5. Pins fell late. 73 after 8 for Nick Soucy with that 9 box. But he is on track to take the 5th game. He's currently at 73 to Casey McCoole 70 in the 8th frame, with 2 boxes to go. And if you're wondering why I'm intermingling those terms, I'm right there with you. Frame, in Candlepin Bowling, they're technically called boxes, and I'm occasionally saying frame just to kind of mix it up a little. Or if you're watching and you're just not super familiar with the Candlepin lingo, it kind of helps you ease into it to the better form of bowling, Candlepin Bowling. Nick Soucy's on the 2. He leaves the 1 and the 10, no mark. 8 box, 9 box, or 10 box for Nick Soucy. He's going to miss everything for an 8 box for 81 and 9. Still on track to take the 5th. 81 to Casey McCool's 79 in the 9th box. And I hope this was a pleasant viewing experience for you. If you enjoyed what you saw and you want to see more, I invite you to strike, comment, and subscribe to the Multiverse of Candlepin Bowling and to other such. Oh my goodness, another right side half Worcester for Nick Soucy. He's just having a heck of a time out there. But yes, folks, also check out the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour page on Facebook and YouTube, the Candlepin Chat group on Facebook, Candlepin Bowling Network on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, Candlepin Corner on TikTok, at Candlepin Bowling on TikTok, Outrun the Bear on Facebook and Instagram, Alley Chat on YouTube, Wolfman12395 on YouTube for uploads of classic Candlepin matches of yesteryear, the Candlepin Bowling channel on YouTube, the Ripping the Rack podcast on YouTube, the Approach podcast, Tony Levesque on YouTube, Charlie Collins on TikTok, and that should be plenty to check out as we just finish off today on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. So after 5 games, Nick Soucy will take the 5th game, 88... No, excuse me, I'm sorry. Nick Soucy will not take the 5th game. He has 88 to Casey McCool's 93. He needed a mark to catch up to Casey McCoole in the 10th frame. So he will take 88 in the 5th to Casey McCool's 93 in the 5th. Casey McCoole will walk away with 4 points. Nick Soucy will take 10 today. So he has 6 before we factor in the grand total pinfall. And we'll just compute the final stats here in just a moment. So both bowlers finished with 15 head pin shots for 50. Casey McCoole with 6 splits. Nick Soucy with 9 splits. And Nick Soucy still takes 10. And Nick Soucy airing out the grievances about his lack of marks today, but he will finish with a 465 grand total and with 4 points on the grand total pinfall, and he'll take 3 games of 5 for 10 points, 465. Casey McCoole finishes with a 5-game total of 434. He took game 3 and game 5, and that should just about do it for us here on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. Another exciting match. And again, check out the Multiverse of Candlepin Bowling, all the ones I mentioned before. We're all over the internet, all over the socials, so whichever one you prefer, we're probably there. And a particular Candlepin chat on Facebook for upcoming tournaments and stuff if you want to get involved. And of course, Candlepin's #4, cancer.com. Can't forget about that. Check it out. Sign up for qualifying roll-offs or to donate. And of course, if you want to bowl, you go to candlepin.org and click Go Bowling to find your nearest center. Anyways, I've been Steve Kelly, and for Casey McCoole and Nick Soucy, it's been great streaming to you today. We'll see you in the next Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour match. Have a great one, everybody.